Hi, and welcome to this live reading from Another Yesterday by Christina Archer, and this is presented by Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Chapter 1, Maggie, March 1967. People long to know the future. We long for visions of what tomorrow will bring just as much as we desire the hinted notions of what will happen. Will tomorrow bring happiness with some blessed event to make our lives better? Or will tomorrow bring sadness as though a disaster happened upon us, ripping our world to shreds as it causes us to crumble into pieces? All too often we look forward to the unknown, excited for the possibilities we are certain will come. We don't ever think about the horrible things that can strike a blow to our existence. Whether we do so out of not wanting to live in fear or we do so because we just want to stay positive, it doesn't matter. We stare into the unknown void with smiles on our faces and hope in our hearts, as we were meant to do, as we should do. It's only when the future does happen, and it's not what we wanted or how we wanted our lives to go, that changes us. But I suppose that's normal. Who would wish to bask in some horrible situation that could leave our world a mess of chaos, strife, pain, or worse, something so awful we didn't believe or think we could live another day? Only a masochistic fool would desire such an existence. Of course, even with the good, life is still change, and is a constant evolving motion flinging us in another direction, whether planned or unplanned, whether wanted or unwanted. Life is all the good and all the bad wrapped up in one. In the good, we look ahead with a level of bounce in our walk, and in the bad, we look over our shoulder, wishing we could have had another yesterday. With my car window cracked, the cool New England breeze blew through my hair as my Volkswagen Beetle rumbled down the road, passing the town's welcome sign. Carved from a huge slab of lumber, the elegant cursive letters were painted in a deep maroon-like wet red. "Welcome to Shadowbrook," I said to myself. "Well, it sounds like a nice place to stop for dinner, maybe even stay the night. What do you think, Rachel?" At just a little over 9 months old, my infant daughter couldn't answer me. I did for her, however, changing my voice into a baby-like tone, mostly to entertain myself. "Sounds good, Mama." "Why, thank you, sweet thing. I think it sounds good, too." I glanced over to the map sitting between the baby seat and me. Maine, the last state before Canada and as far north as I could go. If I didn't figure out where I wanted to stop, I'd have to turn around at some point. And going south is not an option, I said to myself. South meant closer to South Carolina. South meant closer to my parents' house. South meant closer to hell. Nestled along the shoreline, the town of Shadowbrook popped out from behind a line of trees like a surprise on Christmas morning, and I slowed the car down to a near crawl, glancing at the different houses and shops through my windows as we rumbled down the road. One building in particular, a 2-story painted with bright blue paint, sat perched on the beach near a dock full of boats. It was crooked like the Leaning Tower in Italy or some other country I'd learned about in school. What an odd place. The engine in my bug gave a jolt. What the heck was that? It gave another lurch and then a third before it died. What in the world just happened? My foot pressed on the brakes as I coasted the bug over to the side of the road. The wheels rolled through the dirt, grass, and rocks, and the crunching sounds echoed through the window. The bumpy trip sent Rachel bouncing in her seat, and her little socked feet jerked with such a repetitive force her blanket fell to the floor. Jerked awake, her face scrunched as she spit out her pacifier, and I grabbed it before it hit the seat, shoving it between her lips once more. I let out a sigh as she grabbed it with her small fist and held it against her face while she sucked on it. "It's okay, baby girl. It's okay." I rubbed her little squirming feet with my hand until she calmed. "Now, let's just see if we can get this going." I flipped the key over and the engine cranked and cranked. Nothing. I flipped the key over again. More and more cranking, and then silence. It wouldn't start. I checked the gauges. Was it overheating? Was it the oil pressure? Was it out of gas? A growl left my lips at my own stupidity. How can I be out of gas? Easy. You didn't fill it up when you should have. I ducked down, glancing around at the setting sun eerily being drowned out by dark clouds in the distance. While a few people were out and about walking down a few of the streets, the town held more of a hollow vibe, as though very few people lived here, or I was about to star in my first real-life horror movie. Well, I guess we better get to walking and find some gas. I inched Rachel out of the car seat, hoisting her onto my hip while I grabbed my purse and the gas can from the front trunk of the bug. Up ahead, a couple 100 feet and through the trees, a big glowing sign peeked out among the bare branches with the word gas etched in black letters. The bright yellow orb with old-fashioned font was not only a sign of relief, but seemed fitting to this tiny little town. I suddenly felt like a little foolish for thinking the horror film joke. With Rachel on my hip and armed with a gas can in my hand, I trudged up through the parking lot and set the can next to the first available pump. The old building reminded me of the 1940s, with older pumps, retro signs with flashy blinking lights, and 2 garage bays with the doors open and tires stacked just outside them. "Run out of gas?" a voice called out. I spun around, meeting an older gentleman approaching from the garage. With a warm smile on his round face, he wiped his hands with a rag that wasn't much cleaner than his oil-stained blue overalls. "What gave it away?" I asked, laughing slightly. "I suppose it was a stupid question." "Nah, it wasn't." I adjusted Rachel over to my other hip, fixing the bottom of my coat and her thick blanket underneath her so as to not expose any skin. "Did you have to walk far?" he asked. "No, I'm just down the road." "Well, let's get your can filled up then. They say a storm is coming, and you don't want to get tied up in it." Before I could grab the handle of the dispenser, the old man fetched it and knelt down beside the can, unscrewing the cap before he stuck the spout in the top. "Around here, we don't let customers fill their own cars or cans." He gave me a wink and as he tucked the rag into his back pocket. "Well, that's quite the customer service." "Are you new in town or just passing through?" I'm not sure." He pushed the bill of his baseball cap up to where it barely sat on his head and scratched his forehead for a second. His snow-white hair stuck out in several directions, and the top was so thin it hinted the chance he'd be as bald as a baby's butt within the next few years. "Well, Shadowbrook is a great town to stop and stay for a while, at least until you know where you're going." "I will say it's a cute little town. I mean, from what I've seen so far. I only drove into it about a mile before I ran out of gas." "There's not much else for you to see, then," he chuckled. "What you've already passed is pretty much most of it." "Are you serious?" He laughed again. This time his round belly jiggled underneath his overalls. "I'm afraid so. We don't have many folks up here living in Shadowbrook. But the tourists come in the spring and summer, and they can fill up the place." He paused for a moment. "Or at least fill up the inn. When that's booked, they mostly just come for the day." "So there is an inn?" "Yeah. The 1308 Brookhouse Inn. It's just up the road about another half a mile. It's right on the beach, of course. You won't want to spend much time out in the sand this time of year. March isn't much for beach weather." "Yeah, I wouldn't think so either." I glanced up at the sky. The dark clouds that were once in the distance were closer, a lot closer, and a cool breeze had blown in from the north. "Some nights the chill can definitely take your breath away, but that's Maine for you," he laughed. "But if you're looking for the inn, you can't miss the place. Just head down that way and you'll run into it. It's owned by Helen Stanford, and she's a wonderful woman." His eyes glinted with a little bit of sparkle I couldn't help but notice. The gas pump dinged and shut off, and the old man removed the spout and twisted the cap back on. "That will be $4.80 for the gas." I handed him a $5 bill, refusing the change as I grabbed my gas can. "Thanks for the help." "You're welcome. If you stay at the inn, tell Helen I said hello." He stuck out his hand. The name's Jerry, by the way." "It's nice to meet you. I'm Maggie Wilson." "Nice to meet you, too." As he set his hat back onto his head, a raindrop hit my face, and we both looked up at the clouds. "Do you want to ride back up to your car?" "Oh, no, I'll be fine. I'm really just down the road." He lifted his brows as he scratched the back of his neck. "Are you sure?" "Yeah, totally sure. You have a nice evening." "You too." With a last quick wave, I trotted back down the road to my car. I set Rachel in her seat, then moved to the tank. Thunder rumbled above my head, and before I could even pray for the storm clouds to hold in their rain until I was done, it started pouring rain, drenching me within seconds. Wet and cold, I slid back into the driver's seat. My teeth chattered as I started my car, praying to the man upstairs the gas was the only thing I needed. With a few clicks over, she purred and began to rumble, and I cranked the heat on full blast so Rachel and I could warm up before I looked at the map again. My finger traced along the different highways and roadways on the printed page. Exactly where was Shadowbrook? Highway 189? I glanced around at the windows blinking while they fogged up. How did I get off of Highway 1? I don't remember taking any off-ramps. Rachel let out a whimper from her seat as she stretched, or at least did as much as she could in the tight confined space. I knew how tired I was of the car driving all the way from our house in Washington to San Francisco and then out east. I couldn't imagine how she felt, not knowing what was going on or why she had been forced into this small space for the last week and a half, with no end in sight. What do you think, Rachel? Should we stay for the night? I glanced back down at the map again. With only a few more towns until I hit the border of Canada, there was nowhere left for me to go. Here or south. Those were my only two options. As I turned down into the tiny parking lot, my headlights shined on the inn. 2 stories, it rested between the sand dunes and reminded me of something one would see in a photograph or a painting, even in the darkness and the rain. In just the short drive, Rachel had already begun to fall asleep, and her eyes sprang open as I scooped her from her seat and the raindrops began pelting her face. She screamed as I tried to tuck her head below my chin. With one hand wrapped around her, I grabbed a couple of our bags with my free arm and dashed down the wooden pier side, walk around to the entrance of the inn. Long tufts of beach grass stuck out between several of the boards, and the blades ticked against them, my ankles, as I passed them. My clothes, already soaked from filling up the car, now dripped, the material so full of water they couldn't possibly hold another drop. I dropped the bags near the door, and as I reached for the doorknob, the door opened from the inside and a man stepped through, bumping into me in his haste. "Oh, I'm sorry," he said, outstretching his hand to grab my shoulder and help me balance. "It's quite all right." No, it's not. I should have been a bit more careful." As he shifted his weight, the light from the lamps hit the chocolate hue of his hair. Younger, but certainly not my age, his face had a few lines like that of someone in their 30s. "Oh, wow, you are soaked to the bone. Let's get you 2 inside." "It's no big deal, really." I patted Rachel on the back before I bent down and grabbed for the handles of my bags. "Here, let me at least get those for you." You don't have to. Please, it's the least I can do for almost running you over." His smile played off the gentleness of his voice, deep and bold, and yet soft as though he could calm a storm with mere words. "Well, I guess since you said please." He fetched the bags for me and held the door open as I walked inside. The smell of the sea, just as strong as it was on the porch, wafted through the foyer as I made my way up to the front desk. I spied a silver bell rested on the corner, but as I lifted my finger to tap on it, the man called out behind me. "Hey, Helen?" "Yeah?" a woman's voice answered. "You got someone new here." Heels clicked against the hardwood floor in the room next to us, and as I spun to face the man, a woman strode through a pair of open French doors. Her long lavender skirt brushed against the floor, hiding the very shoes that had made such a noise. "Good evening," she said, with her gray hair tucked up in a loose bun. She studied me from my head down to my toes and then back up again, peering over the tiny gold frames of her glasses that had slipped down her nose. "May I help you?" "I guess I'm here to check in." "Oh, all right. Let me get you a couple towels first." Before I could utter a word, she vanished into another room, reappearing with a couple of folded linens in her arms. She wrapped one around my shoulders, then motioned me to move so she could lay one down on the floor. "I'm so sorry for getting the floor wet." "Not to worry, dear. Happens more than you think up here in New England. My name is Helen. Maggie Wilson." She turned toward the man. "Is she a friend of yours, James?" No, I just wanted to help her inside." "Oh, well, aren't you ever the nice gentleman?" "Not quite. Nearly ran over her as I was leaving." He ducked his chin as if he was tipping a hat, even though there wasn't one sitting on his head. "I'll let you get to checking her in, though. Good night, Helen." He turned to leave, but snapped his fingers and spun back around. "I'm stopping by Jerry's on the way back to the cabin. Want me to give him a message?" One of Helen's hands shot to her hip. "No, I don't." James laughed. "I just thought I'd ask." "Good night, James." Bidding him farewell, she faced me once more. A gentle smile etched through the lines of her face. "So, do you know how long you are staying with us?" I shook my head. "I just need somewhere to stay for the night." She glanced down at my feet once more, and her eyes narrowed as she slowly traced my body back up to my head. Her gaze only stopped on one thing. Rachel. Are you in any kind of trouble? She asked as she moved around me, making her way toward her desk. No, ma'am. I just need a place to stay. And the baby is? My daughter. Your daughter? Yes, ma'am. Helen eyed me once more and clicked her tongue. Hesitation hitched through her shoulders as she fetched a ledger book and flipped it open to the middle pages. I hope you don't take offense to my asking, but seeing as I have a few guests, and myself, of course, to look after, I just need to know about what? The child's father. Are you running away? Is he going to show up looking? He's gone. I adjusted Rachel in my arms, hoisting her up a few inches back onto my shoulder. She kicked her legs for a moment, letting out one soft cry before she fell back asleep. Helen swallowed hard. Gone isn't exactly an answer. It's actually kind of vague. I don't think it is, but he's no longer in our lives, so you don't have to worry about him showing up. He won't. My eyes shot down to the floor as I fought tears, blinking them away. My apologies for asking. I shook my head reluctantly, meeting her gaze once more. It's all right. I understand why you did. She grabbed a pencil and flipped another page in her logbook, glancing at me with her eyes and without moving her head. So just one room for one night? Yes, ma'am. With a deep sigh, she etched a few notes in her book and slapped it shut, fetching a key from the back wall. She moved around the desk, motioning me to follow her up the stairs to the second floor and down a long hallway lined with several tables filled with flowers. This is my favorite room. It's on the corner and has windows of two of the walls instead of just one like the others. One view is of the beach, and the other is of the gardens. There are gardens, too? Well, not this time of the year, but I help the flower shop owner by growing some of the local blooms. It saves her some money, and it makes my inn look beautiful. Helen stuck the key into the door lock and twisted it, popping the door open for me to enter. From the four-posted bed topped with a huge white comforter and draped canopy to the long white curtains hanging from the windows, breathtaking seemed like too tame of a word to use. It's stunning in here. Thank you. She walked up beside me and laid her hand on Rachel's back. I'm afraid I don't have any cribs to bring up. I actually haven't had a baby in here in a long time. It's mostly couples or families with older children. It's all right. She slept in the bed with me before. There are a few extra pillows in the closet if it helps, and if you need even more, I can bring them up. I'm sure what we have here will be fine. She ducked her chin and turned to leave, but stopped and faced me once again. My dining room is still open for dinner if you want to come down after you dry off. It's not much, just a bit of stew, but my mother's recipe, and some home-cooked cornbread. That's okay, I'm not hungry. Well, it's open for another 20 minutes if you change your mind. It might help you warm up. Let me know if you need anything else beside the pillows. I will, thank you. I hope you enjoy your stay and have fun while you're here. As she shut the door behind her, I glanced around the room. My eyes filled with tears, brimming until they streamed down my cheeks. Have fun. What was fun anymore? Surely the word held meaning, but what was that meaning? Webster's dictionary defined fun as enjoyment, amusement, or lighthearted pleasure. To me, though, it meant nothing. To me, it meant only the pressure to act a certain way as though nothing bad happened, or to smile as though nothing bothered me, or to live as though I'd gone through none of what I had. So many had told me in the last couple of months my life would get easier. Time will heal my wounds, and I will laugh again, and I will go on living, and I will love again. Each statement, and especially the last one, always felt like the rug was yanked out from under my feet. I didn't want easier, and I didn't want my wounds healed. I wanted to not have them at all.